So you do want to talk through, if you didn't feel as involved and informed in the initial conversations, whether you have life insurance, what company holds your life insurance, what death benefit do you have for your policy? If it's a term policy, when does it expire? All of these are important details to know. It's also incredibly important as the stay at home or lower income earning spouse to know the details of the life and disability insurance on the higher income earning spouse. Because in the scenarios that I've mentioned where the higher earning spouse dies and the person who's left with the money doesn't know whether it's going to be enough, those are conversations that could have been had before that person's unfortunate demise. So for your spouse, you want to know, where is your life insurance held? What is your death benefit? More importantly, how did you determine that death benefit? Another common thing that we see from the higher income earning spouse is them deciding how much life insurance they should have on themselves. And I would argue that it's more important for the surviving spouse in that scenario to determine how much is appropriate. It's not really that helpful for me to decide for my wife how much money she should get if I die. It's much more important for my spouse as the person who would be managing that money if I'm not around, for both herself and our son, to determine whether $1 million or $2 million or $4 million is enough. So understanding the calculation for the amount of life insurance is an important detail, as are the same details I mentioned before, where if you have term life insurance, and most people who have life insurance do, knowing exactly when that policy expires. Some of the worst moments in my life have been when a client or somebody who I worked with years back has passed, their spouse or their child calls me asking about the details of a policy, and I have to tell them that the policy expired 2 years before the person died, 6 months before the person died. Even if it was 10 years, if it's money that they thought they might get and they don't, it's a miserable feeling. So knowing the expiration date of your term policies and your spouse's is important. For disability insurance, income replacement that comes in the door if your spouse is ill or unable to work, you also want to know the details of those policies, although they look a little different. In this scenario, your spouse would be disabled, maybe not to the point where you have to manage all the affairs, but typical disability policies aim to replace 60% of your take-home pay. Is 60% of your spouse's take-home pay enough to pay the bills and expenses that you have on your plate? And also, what type of income is covered? If you have a spouse who earns a significant amount in bonuses, who earns a significant amount in equity compensation or overtime pay, those are typically not covered by group disability policies at their job. And if your spouse or partner doesn't have a policy separate from their workplace plans, you could be in a position where you're actually getting 20 to 30% of their full compensation package because of those portions of their pay that aren't covered by their group policy. For any debts that you have, you also need the details of this information as well. And it's interesting how this can come into play. You take a mortgage, for example, as the lower income earning spouse or the stay-at-home spouse, there's a high possibility that you're in a home that you technically as a family own, but you're not on the mortgage. So you don't have the ability without your spouse's consent to call and ask about details of what you owe and things of that nature. And with a mortgage, it's not uncommon for that loan to be sold. So you might have remembered going into the bank or going to the title attorney's office to close on a loan, and the loan was held at Wells Fargo Bank. And maybe 10 years down the line, that mortgage has been sold 3 or 4 times. And if you don't pay the bill, you literally don't even know who holds the loan, but it would still have to be paid after your spouse passes or if they're incapacitated. So you need to know the information on all debts, your mortgages, your student loans, who are your servicers, what are the interest rates, what are the monthly payments. And for all of this, whether it be an investment, an insurance policy, a debt, what is the access information? What website do I go to access information? What is the username? What is the password? I encourage people to have secure online locations where they can access all of their passwords. For my family and for my extended family, even my in-laws, because as I've told you, my wife's grandparents are 98 and 99 years old, we've established locations where we can access any piece of information financially so that if one of us is incapacitated, those who are trying to handle our affairs are not left in the dark. And for you, that access is very, very, very crucial.